Oh man, this might not be my best effort today. I'm like really tired.
I'm gonna use that to start the podcast.
Okay, that works for me.
Hey everybody, welcome to We Watch TV, the podcast about TV we watch. This is episode 20. Oh crap.
28, right?
Yeah, 28. Thank you. Man, I'm tired. I'm still tired from this weekend.
Yeah, my social battery is drained, but it was a good weekend. We went back to my hometown for my high school reunion. Let's just say it was not my 10-year reunion because I already celebrated that one, and use your own math. But not my
Which
30th.
one could it be?
Not my 30th reunion. Not my 30th. I'm not that old yet.
Okay.
But it was a fun weekend. Got to see some people that I literally hadn't even seen in 20 years that didn't show up to our 10-year.
I got to see a bunch of people I'd never seen in my entire
Daniel
life.
and I did not go to high school together. We met in college, but tagged along. Got to see good friends again, reconnect with some people. It was a fun weekend. Even though you didn't go to school with me, you didn't have a terrible time, right?
I mean, in a sense of like, I could have thought of worse things to be doing, sure.
I think you had fun. You learned some Parkersburg lore. That's my hometown. Not everybody knows that. I guess don't go stalking me.
You guys are really interested in your Parkersburg lore.
Some wild stuff. But I think
you made me take a tour of your old high school.
Yes.
Folks,
We're the
how many
school
people
of
out
champions.
there? I mean, I couldn't take a tour of my own high school because it doesn't exist
your
anymore.
high school is like 2 feet.
Okay.
It does exist. Your high school's a middle school now.
But I wouldn't want to go in there if I was offered
Okay,
it.
we're the School of Champions, Flex. You got to see me, guys. So our field house, we had a separate like field house facility. That's where like the basketball court is. Like it used to be locker rooms over there. Then they switched them, but that's kind of like our sporting facility. And they all have concerts there. Sometimes it's actually where I graduated, inside of the field house, even though it should have been outside. Not bitter or anything. 20 years later. Oops, just revealed the year. But if you're like a state champion, or you made All-State, your picture is in the wall of the field house. You got to see that your wife not only has one picture, I have 2 pictures, my state championship cross country and state championship track. Not a flex or anything, guys.
I mean, you told me that happened, and I had no reason to doubt you.
I wanted to show you and show that experience. I feel like you had more fun at the party part, though.
Well,
we had our
yes,
party in the
there
evening.
was beer there, so
yeah,
that's by default.
And that was a good time. Kind of like basically one of my friends from school and we just kind of set our husbands up who didn't go to school with us and was like, here, you guys can socialize.
It's like you set your 2 kids at the playground.
Yeah, right.
Say,
We
hey,
made like
here,
a play date. Like,
you guys just hang out. We're gonna go
and then
talk
I would
to the
come
other
check
moms.
on you just to make sure you were still vibing while I was making the rounds. But as fun as it was, I loved reconnecting with everybody. It was a great time. I had a blast. My social battery from the weekend is just depleted because right after that weekend event, got up, did a longer run the next day, and then went right into work. And I've got a long week ahead of me, and I'm just tired. You're just tired too.
Yeah, I mean, it'll take me weeks to recover
And your
from
social
talking to that
battery
many
is
people.
different than mine.
Listen, and I'm better today, but legitimately, my voice was raspy from speaking so much to people.
I'm used to talking all the time.
I mean, there was music playing, so I had to project more than I was probably using my podcast.
We were
voice.
playing our hits from 2003.
Yeah, that was great.
I think everybody's doing the math to figure out when I
right
graduated.
next to my head.
But it was a good time. You had fun. Right?
Yeah.
It was a decent time. And our social batteries work differently. My social battery is the type where, because I've toe that line between introvert and extrovert, I'm definitely more on the introverted side, but I'm right in the middle. So I can get energy out of a positive social experience, which that was. But then it's like that high wears off, and by Sunday afternoon after the run outside, it's just done. And whereas Daniel, yours is like on the E setting, like even if he has to be social for people like an hour. Not only were you social with like my friends, but you also
Your mom talked my ear off for like 2 hours
my mom,
straight.
who's definitely extroverted, probably just talked to you for like the whole hour that I was getting ready to go.
Was it only an hour? Because it felt longer.
But she get you donuts just for you.
I got donuts, yeah.
Anyway, Daniel, what have we been watching? Let's get into it.
Before we get into that, we just want to remind everybody, if you like the podcast and you want to support us, get out there on Apple Podcast or Spotify or I guess Google, wherever you listen to the podcast at. And if you don't, make sure you follow us.
Yeah.
And if you have followed us, but you haven't given us a rating yet, we would really appreciate that. Again, I don't want to influence your rating. Just don't use my scale, is
Yeah,
all I'm
remember
saying.
Daniel's scale? It was fine. He's much a harder critic. Use my scale.
Use any scale but mine. So,
Okay, now back to it. What have
Back
we been
to it.
watching?
We finished this episode. So we took a break last week to give you Barbenheimer, and so we're kind of playing catch up a little bit this week. And so we want to start out. We're talking the last 2 episodes of Marvel's Secret Invasion.
Yes.
Which was the second, the 5th and the 6th episodes.
And that's over, and they don't have any plans, as far as I know, to make a season 2, correct?
I doubt after the finale that the reception they will.
So I feel like whenever we do ultimately one of our super cuts of this, I'm going to be like, you sound like a clown in the beginning of the episode, because I'm talking about, I was like, don't sleep on
defended this
Secret
show.
Invasion. We both did.
Yeah.
We both did. We defended it. And the second to last episode, I was like, this is the second to last episode. I mean, it was all right. So if I'm saying it was all right, it must have been like, a step above crap according to your rating system. And then the finale happened. We put off the finale because I know it's not going to be, well, maybe not bad, but not great if I'm not being spoiled by a Marvel finale or like a Star Wars finale. And I was like, I've seen no spoilers for this. So that means no one's talking about it. And then it started, because you're in some more like nerdy groups than me.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And you were like, I heard it's a big fat nothing burger and just boring, but it's only 30 minutes and just like nothing really gets solved. And I'm not going to say it was boring, but it did not feel like a finale, and it kind of soiled like the show for me.
I will sum up the finale in the following words. It was a wet fart.
A wet fart.
Yeah.
All right. That's quite the description. It was just...
It wasn't a bang. It made a noise.
The show started off so promising. But was it you that told me that you read that, like, at some point during production they shifted a writing team or something?
Showrunners traded out. They finished principal production, and then they changed showrunners, and they did 4 months of pickups.
I even felt like a whole shift in what the tone of the show was supposed to be about. Obviously, I still think if you're into Marvel shows, give it a try. But don't take your time with it. Don't expect. Like I said, the first couple episodes were good, but then it's just I don't know what happens.
You know what? The promise of these new Marvel shows on Disney Plus was that they were going to matter.
Yeah.
To the overall.
And I'm not sure this one did.
And I don't know what how this matters.
Do you think they'll tie it in with the Marvels coming out this fall?
Well, at the beginning of this show, Nick Fury was up in space and he came back to Earth.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show, he goes back to space.
Yeah.
So he's literally in the same place he was when he started the show.
Do you think they'll tie it in
I don't think it's going to. I don't know.
Because we just got a Loki trailer that dropped as the day that we're recording this podcast. Is today July 31st? And they showed the clip in the trailer that was actually in Ant-Man. Like the end credits of Ant-Man. So we know that that's connected, and we all knew that would be. It just I liked seeing what Fury was up to. I thought the characters are compelling. Gravik, one of our kins. Now that's all I see him because he was in the Barbie movie.
He got dispatched in just such a nonchalant way.
Or the resolution of that character. And I'm going to say this, and I don't want you to be offended so just brace yourself, Daniel. Because you have told me this and you've agreed with me that other than I guess your buddy Khan, Star Trek sometimes is notoriously kind of limp with their villains and their resolutions.
No,
they really Star Trek that one up. They were just like, Gravik's gone, it's done.
I will go into extreme detail with you on the failings of Star Trek movie villains. They do better in the TV shows.
It was just like, okay, Gravik's gone.
Well, you asked me, you were like, is he dead? Because you missed it.
Notice.
The hole in his chest was there and blink and you miss it.
The whole filming of him and Emilia Clarke's
fight was so stupid.
They did what they could with what they were given, but yikes. I feel like Olivia Colman was the saving grace of that episode, and she only had a few scenes, but every scene she's in, she just steals the show. So that's good parts about that finale. But the end scene, and again, remember guys, this is a spoiler podcast, and we do put the timestamps on. Daniel takes a lot of time to do that. So
yes,
you can always
I do.
Look. He really does. So if you want to skip this part and go ahead, you can do that. So that being said, the final scene was Fury saying goodbye to his wife, who was also a Skrull, and they obviously still love each other. And she was like, "Would you love me with my regular face or whatever, her not human face?" And he's basically "Of course." And then they kissed, and he went back to space. And I'm like, was this whole show Like, I knew it was revealing what he had been up to, but I'm like, was this whole show like a love story, a romance? Did I miss something, or did they just kind of like? Because that was like the pivotal moment at the end, and I was just like, what?
It was really a strange tone.
Yeah, it just kind of. And then like the big thing that I would have focused on that I feel like fans of Marvel were into was when we saw the real Rhodey, right?
They did nothing with it at all.
He just kind of woke up and they were like, "Oh, you've been like trapped down here and out of it for quite some time." So we still don't know when the scroll took over Rhodey.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I think the director or one of the writers or showrunners have come out and like made suggestions about how long, and but it doesn't matter. I don't care what they say.
I don't care their suggestions.
If they didn't put it in the show, then it's not. It doesn't matter.
So it's like Secret Invasion. We defended it, and we were like, "Watch this, don't sleep on it." And then these last 2 episodes, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Wet fart.
Yeah. And you know,
not great.
I've been thinking about the Marvel shows in general more lately, and I've come to this conclusion that WandaVision, Loki, and to a certain extent Falcon and Winter Soldier are really the only like mandatory
like they're
watch.
The top tier ones.
The only ones you have to watch, Loki in particular, is really the only one you need to watch to understand the movies right now.
But I mean, I still think like She-Hulk was funny.
Sure, I'm not saying it was bad.
Vibe. It was like a sitcom vibe.
Their origin stories and the movie and
Ms. Marvel. If you're going to watch
it was
the Marvels,
great. It's an origin story.
Yeah, but isn't she going to show up in the Marvels?
Yes, but I guarantee you that they will shoot the movie in such a manner
and like explain it a little bit.
You don't necessarily have to have seen the show in order to understand where she came from.
Maybe you'll understand that character and have more. Like,
sure. But I mean, I think Marvel has kind of just started to move away from origin story movies. Look at Spider-Man. Spider-Man never got an origin story in the MCU. Granted, everybody knows Spider-Man's origin story, but I don't.
Wasn't Spider-Man like the number 3 in the rank? Like they always say, like Batman, Superman, or like the big ones.
Yeah.
I know that's
everybody
DC,
knew about
but
Spider-Man.
Like Spider-Man's like the number 3 when it comes to like notoriety of. Like I'm not like a comic book nerd, but I didn't know who Iron Man was. I vaguely knew who Captain America was, but didn't know anything about Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, so there a lot of this like Marvel stuff I never knew about, but I always knew, who Superman, Batman. I know that's DC, and then of course I knew about Spider-Man.
So in a recent interview, that hateful, terrible, awful CEO Bob Iger mentioned,
"Oh man, I'm so disappointed
that they were going to be taking a step back
Yeah.
on Marvel shows.
Well, they're really expensive to produce.
And
I
the
wonder
fact
how
of
much.
the matter is, while we have both defended the Marvel shows and we have liked a lot of them, if stuff like Secret Invasion is what they've been doing,
and you're going to end
then
on a
I
wet fart.
kind of understand.
How much
why.
do you think they spent on Secret Invasion?
I don't know. I feel like somebody said. Feel like I heard somebody talking about how Secret Invasion almost had the same budget as Oppenheimer.
Wow. It just upsets me because it started off strong. And then it just really like
they didn't pay anything off.
And I really like Emilia Clarke being in the Marvel universe, and she's given interviews that said that's the best she's ever been treated.
Yeah,
like in a show, because I don't think she was treated very well from interviews I've read on Game of Thrones. And that's pretty much, if I would say, most people probably know her from Game of Thrones. But I would still recommend you watch Secret Invasion. But now I'm like, don't rush. Have it as your back. Have it as your filler. When there's
I
don't
think it's required watching if you're going to go see the Marvels later this year. I don't really think anything that happened in that movie is going to come up and matter whatsoever.
But that's enough of that.
Yeah.
Let's get into the next.
Okay, you want to talk Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2?
Sure.
We have 3 now we normally would have probably have only had 2 episodes to talk about, but we got a third because Comic-Con dropped an episode and then gave it to us Saturday night. So we actually watched Barbie Friday, Oppenheimer Saturday, got home from the theater Saturday. We were sitting on the couch and I like dropped my phone. I was like, the episode of Star Trek is out.
We kind of broke a rule because normally we don't watch a new show after 10 because we're old. But we did that. And I think it was good because, you come out of Oppenheimer, it's a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
For reasons.
Not to mention that specific episode of Star Trek
was the one you were excited
that
for.
Got over the internet really quickly. But before we get to that one, so we watched, we've got to talk about episode 6, 7, and 8. Episode 6 was Lost in Translation. And
a
so
horror-focused episode.
It was an horror-focused episode. It brought James Kirk over to the Enterprise. They were in
and he was actually in the timeline again.
This was prime timeline Kirk for the first time, really, in Strange New Worlds that we've seen him. And I thought it was a really great episode.
Great episode.
We got to see Spock and Kirk canonically meet for the first time, and it wasn't like this big to-do thing. It was just they were sitting in the Enterprise bar and get introduced by Uhura, and there they are.
There was some more flirtations with him and I can never say her name right. Leon.
Yeah.
Because they obviously met in that other timeline, so I liked that. I liked that vibe. I thought it was a solid episode. Kind of made me a little sad because Uhura's clearly dealing with PTSD from losing. I don't remember what his name was, but the one guy. Remember the guy died. What was his name? And the woman from Kimmy Schmidt's now in his possession.
Oh, yeah. Hemmer.
Yeah,
from last season.
That was kind of
my
what
gosh,
she was,
I had a huge brain
she was
fart
having.
just now.
I know. It was like kind of a pivotal. See, social batteries gone.
My gosh.
Which affects our brains. But that was like a pivotal part of the episode. She was having like some PTSD because she really hadn't taken the time to deal with that loss.
No, she hadn't at all.
So I thought that was another solid, great episode.
It's funny, actually, that James Kirk is the person that helped her with kind of that a little bit, but considering his issues with dealing with death and loss in later canon, obviously not now, but in later canon, it's
I liked
it's
his
an issue that
interaction
comes
with
up.
his brother.
Yeah, you get to see that fleshed out a little bit more in the competition between those two.
I wish, even nothing against the cast, the guy that did his brother, but you told me that in the original show, Shatner, just wore a mustache, which I think his brother does have a mustache.
Yeah, his brother has a mustache.
But it was just Shatner would just put on a fake one, and I wish Paul Wesley would have done that.
That would have been pretty fun.
Or I wish they would have cast, Ian Somerhalder, who played Damon, his brother on The Vampire Diaries, because that would have been fun for me as a Vampire Diaries fan.
Yeah. So,
solid episode. The next one, I'm not familiar with the cartoon Lower Decks.
Yep. Lower Decks.
But I know
well, the
Huey,
cartoon,
what's his name? Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid, yeah.
Again, guys, I call actors their names from other shows, so Huey was in that one. I liked the other girl from that show. She was funny.
Yeah. Lower Decks, the cartoon, is playing off an old Next Generation episode where they just focused on people that weren't the bridge crew. Just the randos.
Well, I loved how they did the opening to make it look like a cartoon.
And then, so for this, they animated the opening of the show, and they did a time travel.
And he still had the purplish hair.
Yep. Jack had the purple hair. Boimler had her rolled up, or Mariner had her sleeves rolled up, and they were kind of really, honestly, like avatars for the fans. Running around the ship, being so impressed by everything.
Well, they were
oh, I can't believe
Yuns. They basically, because we've all commented, not we, but everybody that watched the show about how Spock on this show is hot. I mean, I remember this guy again from Passport to Paris, the iconic Mary-Kate and Ashley movie, and he was Mary-Kate's character's love interest. So this guy's always been on my radar. I think his name's Ethan Peck, and I think he actually is related to Gregory Peck. Anyway, they were Yun Spock, wow, that hair, that body. So I felt they were acting the way fans have reacted to it. I love when stuff shows.
They did upset you slightly because
yeah, they did kind of upset me.
He let slip to Christine Chapel Boimler that in the future he's read all the books on Spock and all the great things he's done, and she never really came up.
Yeah, so I feel they've kind of thrown. Because Chris Chapel seemed really upset about it, and Spock was basically takes that. Well, it would be illogical for me to think about this now, but that Chapel was affected by it. But yeah, I'm sure.
And she's already got
I know
issues with relationships. So
and I love them so much, and I feel I'm really rooting for a doomed ship, but.
Yeah, you kind of are. But
so that was a good episode, and you learned something at the end of the episode because we're watching the credits because they went back when the one people went back to their timeline.
Yeah.
It reverted back to cartoon, and they were talking about Rebecca Romaine's character.
Oh, yeah,
and he's Una, she was hot. One of the guys says that, and then the credits roll, and it says Jerry O'Connell, and I'm oh my gosh, that's Rebecca Romaine's husband. And I guess he's one of the characters.
Yeah, he's
on
a
the
voice
show.
on Lower Decks, and I did not know that.
So they must be Trekkies.
Yeah.
I just assumed that, she probably was that's a good role to take. to act on. But now if they're both doing Star Trek shows,
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they're
and
like
it just made the
actually,
comment about his character pointing out that she was hot like funnier.
yeah,
And you wouldn't, and for
I wouldn't have
once,
gotten that. No,
you wouldn't have known something if it wasn't for me.
Hope
You're welcome.
understood the Star Trek reference.
I did.
Before I did.
Feather in my cap.
Yeah.
In the most recent episode we watched,
Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War.
We Can't All Be Winners is my description of that one.
I thought it
wasn't
was better than you thought it was.
bad. It was just kind of boring, kind of bland compared to the other ones. It wasn't. I still think the premiere is the worst episode that they've had this season, and this was kind of going back to some of the stuff they talked about in that. It wasn't my vibe, and I was annoyed by the storyline. First off, how Pike, and I know he was given orders by Starfleet, but all these people were supposed to be nice and roll out the welcome carpet for this Klingon guy that so many of his crew not only had participated in that war, had issues with, and I just found that because I feel like that is a struggle, and I know he was just doing what he was told, but it really bothered me. I liked the dinner table scene with the tension. It was a little bit of a bummer of an episode for me, and I felt the pacing was slow, and something that you didn't like. I know you don't like this in episodes, so please tell me if I'm right. The flashbacks. There was a lot of flashback scenes, and I just frankly didn't care.
I don't mind flashbacks, but when it's almost half the episode, that's a bit much.
And I mean, they could argue with you and be like, oh, we needed to put the flashbacks in so you understood, but you didn't. There was a lot of them.
It was a lot of flashbacks. It was an up and down episode. There, like you said, the dinner scene was incredibly tense. Mm-hmm. The scene at the end.
The training scene was tense.
The training scene was tense. Really, honestly, any scene where Mbenga, the doctor, was with that Klingon passenger, those two actors really, I thought, did a great job together. But a lot of the stuff that was not them together and the flashbacks just did not work for me.
I just think for me personally, I'm not saying it was bad and awful. It just wasn't my vibe. I was tired when I watched that episode. It just wasn't my vibe. I'm hoping that, but I have confidence because most of the shows, they've knocked it out of the park, that it'll rebound. And I think what they talked about in this episode, maybe not even the end of this season, but it's stuff that they can pull out anytime they want for a future season and a future plot
absolutely.
point.
Well, I'll be honest with you. So we all know that by the time we catch up to the original series, where Kirk is the captain, that Mbenga is not the chief medical officer anymore. It's Dr. McCoy. Right? And I'm wondering if the resolution of this episode is going to be something they use to kind of make, because he's still on the Enterprise. Yeah. He's just not the chief. He's not the chief medical officer anymore.
Well, do you think that he killed the Klingon guy? What do you think? See, I think here's the answer that I'm not supposed to give.
Okay.
I think that the writers don't know. And that they're going to make it up as they go along because they could pull it out at any time they want. I honestly, like, if I were you watching it, I think you probably did kill him.
I heard some comments online that said that the writers shot multiple different views of that scene. So I think that kind of supports your idea.
And Chapel's going to keep the secret regardless because she and him share that trauma.
Either the writers don't know or they are intentionally leaving it ambiguous because maybe they want that flexibility for the future.
And more Chapel Spock issues in this episode because she was refusing to, like, share her emotions. She was like, you don't understand. You don't get what I've been through. Basically, like, let me deal with this on my own. So I'm like, oh, no.
And I will say, I saw a lot of people online who have been in war say that this episode did a good job of portraying the kind of trauma and post-traumatic stresses that can come out of that.
Yeah.
To the ending, I thought it was a good decision to not leave it vague and ambiguous.
And the writers can do with it what they want.
And because the writers in the future can do with what they want. I think that, it's hard because, they have shown us straight up in 2 episodes this season that Dr. Mbenga is can be a cold-blooded murderer.
Because if he needs to be. He was the
butcher. Yeah. Not the Klingon that everybody thought was. Actually, he was the butcher.
Yeah.
So he's the one that opened that chest that had the knife in it, and he's the one that told the Klingon general stop talking.
Yeah.
I kind of think he killed him.
And
I'm not entirely convinced that the Klingon had turned around. I'm not convinced it was in the defense either.
But you know what I am excited for? Like, I know that one was a bit of a bummer, but the upcoming episode is going to be a musical themed.
Mm-hmm.
And any Star Trek fan, if you're out there, all two of you, that's listening
Jeez, wow.
that's listening to this. Anyway, anybody that's like, oh, why would they ever do a musical? The show literally did an episode last season where they were stuck in like a medieval time period. Star Trek is nothing but unhinged. And my question is, why have they taken this long to do a musical from some of what I've seen?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, original series and Next Gen have their own completely wild storylines.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget that one time Kirk got transferred to a mirror universe, and the only way you could tell Spock wasn't the normal Spock was because they put a goatee on him. Or the time in Next Gen when they turned people into salamanders.
Yeah.
So
what are they calling it? It's not Bikini
Subspace Rhapsody.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
That's this week. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm just interested because there's a couple different cast members who are legitimate singers.
Yeah.
So I think it should be good. But we'll see.
Okay.
We'll get back to you guys next week on that one.
And also, we've had some developments with And Just Like That.
I have been ripped off. I have been deceived 2 weeks in a row now. I sat down to watch that show because I told you on this podcast that I was going to watch it when Aiden shows up.
They bamboozled me too. So the first episode, we didn't actually see him.
Just a text message or an email. It wasn't,
oh
yeah, they're boomers, so it was an email.
Carrie emailed him at the end. Are they boomers? I guess they are.
Carrie?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess she could be Gen X.
I thought they were because
yeah, they're probably
X.
They're
more like Xers.
They're probably X. Yeah, sorry.
Don't be
I
a boomer
apologize.
where you think all the millennials are young and we're all.
That's
like,
true. I just can't lump every old person into boomer.
Yeah. So I mean,
I apologize for being ageist on this podcast.
Anyway,
regardless,
it is a
burden that I carry.
He didn't show up in that one, and then the next one, it wasn't until she was talking about it they were going to meet up. It was actually Valentine's Day to go on a date, and he finally showed up at the end. And it was great. It's all coming back.
He's still rocking that mullet.
Now. I think he looks good. John Corbett looks good. Like, I think he's aged very well. Well done.
Character didn't change, though.
I don't know what kind of jacket he was wearing, though. It was
I don't know. It's like...
I thought it was cute, the way he hugged her and the way they talked, but... Anybody that thinks that Carrie and Aiden are going to be in game, he
couldn't go into her apartment.
I know. I just don't think it's happening. But at least he was honest about that. Because that scene, I will say, is the most honest conversation I've really seen Carrie and Aiden have through all this, like, will they, won't they, where he was just like, I straight up can't do it. But again, that being said, he's going to have to eventually be able to go to the apartment. They can't go to hotels and everything. So, and just like that, though, Carrie and Aiden are back together. And they did address the elephant in the room. Like he said, I'm sorry to hear about John. Which is big theme.
What? So how many episodes are left?
I don't know.
Okay. I bet the episode coming up.
John Corbett was signed on to do 5 episodes. So last week's episode was the first one that he actually appeared in.
I'm wrong then.
We have at least 4 more.
I was going to say he shows up in the next episode, and that's about it.
No, he was saying he's supposedly...
that'll take it through the end of the season. So.
He's supposedly on for 5 episodes. Now that, like, Che and Miranda aren't together, the scenes that Che are in, I'm not, like, deeply annoyed.
I have to say, because I haven't watched the show except for these 2 episodes, which happen to be the 2 episodes where
you don't mind Che, do you?
Yeah, there's like what are you guys so upset about this character?
It's because of the way Miranda behaved around Che, and I think if you went back and saw it, you'd be like, oh my gosh,
Miranda's annoying still.
Yeah,
and
she's
that is
still
not
annoying.
The character I remember from the original show.
But she was better in this episode, but still annoying. I like that her not blind date. She met that woman at the book signing because now, like, I guess she's open to any relationships. She was trying to figure it out. Like, she's like, I was into Che, for the person. Am I into women? Am I into men? I don't know. And then they did like a whole, like, the woman was reading like Pride and Prejudice, right?
I think that she was
reading maybe her own
book. Yeah, I think.
But then they were like, she could be my Mr. Darcy, and then she goes to the woman's house and like steps in the cat litter box. The woman's like, the house is a mess. The sheets aren't changed. And Miranda's like, I can just leave. So I thought that was some comedy at least. But
it was of all the sets I've seen on this show so far, that's the one that looked the most New York.
I was laughing.
And I know that like most of the characters in the show at this point are more upper class people
Yeah.
in New York now, but like that was definitely a New York apartment.
Back to Carrie and Aiden's conversation, though. I literally said what Carrie said, and then I'm like, I can't believe they inserted that in the script. He was like, I can't go in that apartment. And I'm like, well, she has that wallpaper now that's flowers. And she's like, I changed my wallpaper. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I think Aiden's ready for round 3 of getting his heart broken. But at least he's more self-aware now. I don't know. Maybe they will get them together. People can change.
I'd be surprised.
Who knows? But regardless, I'm
They
excited.
get picked up for a season 3 yet?
So, I don't know.
Okay, if they
You're asking
do,
me all these questions, honey. My social battery is
if
gone.
he gets picked up, if it's already picked up for a season 3, then they'll break up by the end of the season.
When my social battery is drained, I have less energy to do other things. So I don't know. I feel like they might. I don't know. They could always do another movie too. They love doing those.
Oh, don't do that.
But I really like seeing Aiden again, and now you said you'd watch all the episodes with Aiden, so you're locked in. Locked in.
Oh, God.
Locked in.
I've made terrible choices in my life.
You still like Charlotte and Harry, though, right? Like, Charlotte accidentally had a pot brownie and thought she was having a stroke.
That was funny.
They're just basically comedic relief, the two of them. Like, they have yet
Harry
to have
always
a serious...
was.
Yeah.
Harry was always kind of some comedic. Harry?
Harry, yeah. I thought you said Carrie. I was like, what?
No, Harry. The bald guy named Harry.
Charlotte's husband.
Yeah.
They're just comedic relief. Other shows that I have been watching without you are Cruel Summer, which I've talked a little bit about on here. That finale, I believe, is airing today. I always watch the next day on Hulu. So I will finally talk about that show as a whole in our upcoming episode. And I keep forgetting to mention The Summer I Turned Pretty Season 2. I read those books. Read the first, they're just YA novels. Read the first one literally in one day. The show's a little bit different, more modernized from the books. I know, I'm in like my 30s, literally just had a class reunion, but I love this show and I'm deeply invested. And we got the first 3 episodes on Amazon Prime, and then it's been the weekly release. So what I'm going to do with that is once all that's wrapped, I'm going to give my thoughts then on The Summer I Turned Pretty. But if you like a good young adult show, like, I do recommend that. It is really good. If you're my Taylor Swift fellow fans, so much Taylor music. Conrad, it's kind of a love triangle. Conrad, Jeremiah, and the girl, her name's like Belle. They call her Belly. That's like her nickname. Because you were like, why is her name Belly? When you like randomly walked in the room, I was like,
Sounds
oh,
like
that's
something
like
I
her
would say.
nickname. So it is like a love triangle, but it's good. I like it. And I do like that they changed it from the books a little bit. As long as I still want her to end up with the one she ended up with in the books. But I don't know. We'll see. But my big concern with that is, see, last year when the original show was airing, like right after that, they were already filming season 2. And just like what we're finding with Star Trek and other shows, they haven't started filming season 3. And now this writer's strike and the actor's strike, which again, we're in support of. But I'm like, man, we might not get. And I'm like, what if they don't get picked up for a season 3 because of this? Because I guess contracts can run out of a certain time. And I know how book 2 ends, which I'm sure how the show's they'll end it for season 2 of the show. And I'm like, we can't end like that. We got to have a season 3, even if we have to wait forever.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in the situation we're in right now, best case scenario, a lot of our favorite shows just get delayed for longer than usual, and the worst case scenario is some of them just never come back.
2024 could be a stinker for TV.
Good thing we just started a TV entertainment podcast.
Yeah, right. We do have some good shows that are already in the can though coming up. Only Murders, August 8th, right?
Yes.
What else are we planning to?
Ahsoka is in August as well, though I do not recall exactly the date.
Yeah, it's like more later August though, right? I have here in my show notes.
That's a Star Wars.
Have you looked at your show notes? You would see what's...
Oh crap! You did send that to me.
I did send that to you.
I should actually
we
read.
have plans to slug through The Witcher eventually because it just wrapped, right?
Yeah,
they split the season in parts. We watched maybe 10 minutes of the first episode of the season. We're like, our brains can't handle this. We don't want to watch this, so eventually we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I don't. Why are we? I have not heard good buzz about it.
I'll watch it whenever you want to. I think you've just been not in the mood.
It's a winter show.
It is a winter show. I agree with that.
And what else have we been watching?
Succession is the big one. So the last time we spoke to you, all of you, about Succession, we were getting ready to end season 1. Guess what? We just started season 3.
It was started off, we liked it, but we were going more at a slower pace, and now we're to that point where we are into it. Like, we put off watching Secret Invasion, and now I'm glad we did, because we were like, no, we have to see what happens in Succession.
Yeah.
So what our plans are for that, when we finish Succession, there are 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started season 3, is we'll do a full wrap up of just Succession.
Yeah, I'd say the pace we're at now, September is when you can expect probably just a Succession episode.
Oh yeah. So what do you think about the show though? Just as like
on
the Daniel scale so far.
It's great, and it just keeps getting better
Yeah.
every episode and every season.
And I'm kind of bummed out that like there's no more of it.
Yeah, it's a bummer, but I also like a nice tight few seasons if they're all really good episodes.
Don't wear out your
and
shows.
they lead to someplace. I don't like to. I hate it when shows just peter out after a while
For
and
sure.
meander and have a bunch of junk episodes.
And I can tell the writing is good because none of these people are particularly good people, but
Correct.
I find myself like rooting for them, and I'm like, that's where you have good writing. Because, I mean, you could make arguments that every single character on there is a villain to some extent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not good
For
people.
sure.
But when you're rooting for bad people, that's when you know you've got good writing. So,
But with that, guys, is there anything else you want to talk about, Daniel?
well, we have a few minutes before we have to hard cut this thing. And so I'm just going to jump in there and say we promised a few weeks ago that we would give some thoughts on jury duty.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I just wanted to throw this out there.
Not in the show notes, guys.
So we watched like the first 20 minutes of the first episode.
Yeah.
And then we watched the last episode when they...
We didn't watch the whole thing, but we watched the review.
Spoiler alert, big spoiler alert. So that... well, it's not really because they say what they're doing at the beginning of the first
very
episode.
beginning of the first episode.
Is
but
they put on a mock
that's not how
trial
they marketed it,
with
though.
a mock jury, but they got one guy to show up who on the jury who thought he was actually there for a
It was like
trial.
a Truman Show, if you've ever seen that movie setting with this one guy that's not in on it and being filmed. And
I had heard about
he
it.
knew he's been filmed, but he thought it was like a documentary.
I had heard about it.
I just thought it was a comedy.
Then I saw somebody on Reddit commenting about it, and they went into what happened, and I was like horrified because like that's got to take a toll
though,
on that guy.
They had to like redo kind of like their plan because they got James Marsden, who's
Cyclops.
I was like, see, can't remember even what he's in, but he's always, I feel like he's always like the second place guy and everything, like Cyclops. He was the other character in the Notebook that she didn't end up with because, you know, Ryan Gosling is who she ends up with. I mean, come on, everybody's seen the Notebook by now. He's just been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think he's not, and I understand why they would cast someone like that, not quite hugely famous, but I guess like the guy like really
didn't recognize him.
No,
Yeah.
so they kind of had to like change it up a bit. And I read an interview, and he's like, that's when I started to like suspect that something was a little off, but then he wasn't sure what to do. I feel like I would have smelled the crap in the air immediately and been like, this is weird. And like, these people are weird. Nothing makes sense. And they were talking about like how good of a person he was, that he would do all this stuff. And I'm like, would I have not gotten paid if I would have been like, this is crap. These people are weird. I don't want to do this documentary anymore. Would I have not gotten paid at the end like he did? It was weird. And you say, I know, and guys, if you start the show, Daniel's right. It is going to like spoil you in the first episode because it tells you, not spoil you, but it'll tell you the plot of it. But anytime I'd see the ads for it on like Amazon, I just assumed it was like a comedy sketch done like Parks and Rec style.
And it was, except one of the people didn't know that was happening. I mean, that's essentially what they did.
That's weird. I feel like I would not be happy about that. I mean, I would like the money, but that just, it's odd.
Well,
I would have thought it was odd,
it-
the whole documentary thing to begin with, because for some reason, the world is obsessed with me being on jury duty. And I know when you get summoned, like you can't even bring your phone in the courthouse with you. So like, I know like how restrictive and locked down everything is, especially I'm sure for like higher profile cases. So the whole time I would have been like, oh, you're going to let cameras back here to watch everything and to talk to the jurors, because that's not how they usually do stuff like that. Unless
Yeah.
it's like the OJ trial. Like that would have, so I would have been like immediately sus.
I don't know. I just thought
Maybe we're just broken negative people.
maybe
I don't know.
I just thought like I just put myself in his shoes, and I would have hated that. Like that
Yeah.
in that last episode when we watched, and they like started sitting him down and talking to him and telling him all the stuff, and then he got to walk behind and see the screens where the people were watching.
I thought he took it in stride, but I
Ooh.
know he said in interviews he's had like some issues like in terms of like paranoia.
Well, yeah.
And then I think I did
like,
read
what's real?
he did get summoned for like actual jury duty.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That would be traumatic.
Yeah, it's traumatic.
So sorry to throw that curveball at you there at the last minute.
This guy tells me to make show notes and then always goes off script on me.
That's my job here.
All right. Well, that social battery's still down and I'm really tired and I really want to eat dinner.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go make tacos. Everybody, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of We Watch TV, a podcast about the TV shows we watch. You can find more from Hope and Daniel on Instagram at We Watch TV Podcast. Drop us a line if you like the show, have a question, or a recommendation. You can find Hope on Twitter at Lil Runner and Daniel on Twitter at The Real Hobo Dan. Music for today's podcast was provided by Your Tunes from Pixabay. Artwork was created using the AI program Midjourney with prompts written by Daniel.